So the House of Representatives has finally gotten involved in the NCAA saga of name, image, and likeness and transfer portal. You wanted to get the politicians involved. Now they're involved. We'll talk about this next on the ProZone. Welcome to the ProZone. I'm Matt Roberts. So the NCAA has had a lot of issues happening lately with name, image, and likeness and transfer portal. If you go back and watch my shows, episodes 1 through 8, basically we cover most of this, or how it relates to recruiting as a rule and what's been happening in college sports. Okay? It was a mess then. It's become more of a mess since then. I haven't done the shows for a bit. I've had a lot of personal issues and other things in business that has gotten in the way, but now we're trying to get back a little more regular with this episode. So this one had to be addressed. While it got out of control with the NCAA and became a mess. I mean, think about this. We had 1,100 football players, Division I football players, enter the transfer portal last year. Okay, 1 year ago. We've had 4,000 enter the transfer portal this year. 4,000. That's just in the initial window back in December. So it's become crazy. Players will go to a team for a year. Some players were leaving after half a year. One quarterback, was it Matthew Sluka from UNLV? He played 4 games. And then said, I'm going to declare myself a red shirt, and I'm going to enter the transfer portal at the end of the season. Just left his team high and dry, and he was the starting quarterback. Unbelievable. But this is what's been happening. And we've had so many different things that I haven't even addressed. I had them in little blurbs, little bits on like TikTok and Instagram. And you can see those ProDynamix Studios on Instagram, ProDynamix on TikTok. And you can hear what I've had to talk about. But it's gotten so out of control, and the money has gotten ridiculous. We're talking athletes that are demanding money to go to a team. The first question they ask a coach is, what are you going to pay me? There's athletes getting paid $3-4 million, and that comes from the no collectives. The schools don't have that kind of money to pay them. At least they don't have it allocated yet. So the no collectives, as I discussed before, for those who haven't been watching, go back and watch those. But quick touch on that. No collectives are basically a 501c3 that has been created outside of the school, but it's kind of affiliated with the school. And it's a place where donors, wealthy donors, and anybody else can just donate a bunch of money, tax deductible, because it's a charity. 501c3 is a charity, nonprofit organization. And then that money is given to athletes, and they're paid to play. Basically, it's pay for play. Back in the day, friends of the program used to get money and pull it together, and then they'd pay off athletes to basically bribe them to come play for the team. That was illegal. Name, image, and likeness has now made it legal, but it's not really legal because it's originally name, image, and likeness was supposed to be just an athlete being able to make money off of their name, their image, or their likeness. So if a company wanted to use them like Nike or Gatorade or somebody else wanted to pay an athlete to use their image and do a commercial or whatever and sponsor their product, they could do that. Well, that, of course, as I predicted, got corrupted exponentially because I said, what's going to stop a company who is led by a University of Georgia, for example, graduate who wants to bring in University of Georgia players, and the company, like Crystal, is a Georgia-based company, and it's a fast food place, gas station, kind of convenience store. They had a whole bunch of players that were all being given no money to go play for University of Georgia. Well, what if the people who ran that company were alumni of University of Georgia, and they say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to give out these great nil deals to all these athletes. to get them to play for our alma mater. That was me considering that as a piece of corruption on the small scale. It became way bigger, way quicker than I could have ever imagined. I mean, these people, these hawks were ready to go, dude. They created name, image, and likeness collectives and pooled their money. And then they didn't have to pay the kids to sponsor a brand. They basically create a camp. And then in the camp, they say, oh, well, you're going to be at the camp. You'll be a spokesperson for the camp. And then that's what we're paying you for. And they're paying these kids $100,000, $1 million, whatever it is. I mean, who was it? Pavia. Pavia from Vanderbilt, right? He's a quarterback. He wanted to leave. He was done his college career, right? He was done. He had his 2 years of JUCO, right? And that counts against your eligibility. Now in college, you get 5 years, 4 years, and a red shirt. So he used up 2 of his years. That gave him 3 years left. He used those 3 years, and then at the end he goes, I want to play another year. I don't think it's fair. So now what they're doing, and all these athletes, they're all using the same argument. And I'm going to talk about that in another show because it's really, they're going with antitrust lawsuit, okay? And they're following antitrust lawsuit against the colleges. That's how everything started. Transfer portal getting corrupted to the point where people could transfer as many times as they want. That started with the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was like I think it was like 1890. I believe it was the year of that. Now again, I'll talk about that more in another show because that's a deep dive, and it's not too deep of a dive, but it's deep enough of a dive where it's important because that's also being kind of corrupted. The short version is the Sherman Antitrust Act was about monopolies of companies, and the athletes are saying, well, they're monopoly. I'm being restricted from making money because of, but you're not an employee, nor are you a company. However, now that they have making $3-4 million, whatever it is, now they're kind of a company, but now they can get the money, but other people can't get the money. So now there's a kind of a monopoly on the end of the Power 5 schools who could afford to pay these athletes big money with their big no collectives. That's why it's for another show. It's a lot of weeds to clear on that one. But everyone uses the antitrust lawsuit. And that's what has caused all of these problems. Everything is antitrust. So Pavia said, oh, it's against the Sherman Antitrust Act, and I should be able to get another year of eligibility. So, of course, the NCAA, instead of fighting it, they cave. As they've done, they did it with name, image, and likeness. They did it with transfer portal. They're caving. They allowed the barn doors to be wide open and let the horses run free. And now they're trying to get them back in. There's no way to get them back in. I said it before, it's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Charles Barkley said that in a recent interview as well. But it's the truth. You can't fix it once it's broken. It's too far out of control because now it's been established for over a year that athletes can get transfer as many times as they want and can get as much money as they want from these nil collectives. And you're trying to fix that. It's very hard to fix that once it's already going crazy. So with all that going on, and I'll recap some of those in future shows, I'll touch on them because there's a lot of stuff that happened that I have opinions on and need to be looked at. But that all leads to something new that came down today. Now, I was going to make this show about something totally different, how out of control it's become and what coaches are now saying. The same coaches who ignored it, some coaches didn't. Nick Saban, he quit. He said, I'm done. I'm out of here because he saw the writing on the wall. He saw what it was going to be. It's not the development of young talent anymore. It's pay for play. And he didn't want that. But now the coaches are all catching on. Now all of a sudden they're being vocal because they don't like it, because they see what is happening. I told you it was going to happen in the first place. I was saying it, but I'm not big enough of a name yet. But Gotta pay attention, guys. The writing's on the wall. If you can just look past the nose on your face, you can see what was going to happen. This here has the same kind of problem that if we're not careful, and the NCAA isn't careful, and if the politicians aren't careful, and since when are politicians ever really careful, it could become something really brutal. All right, so let's touch on this. With the transfer portal, it's getting harder and harder for high school athletes to be seen by colleges. The college coaches are going to load up their rosters with players on the portal, more established players. So you have to find a way to set yourself apart. Well, one to do that is not to put that on a website, some recruiting website, and hope that they find you, because coaches don't go to recruiting websites as a rule. They just don't. They don't have to, especially the bigger schools. You need to get exposure. You need to make sure that you're seen by these coaches. Now, you can develop your own resume. Work on your strength, work on your playmaking, work on your academics, work on your discipline. That's great. But you can have the greatest product ever, and it's worthless if nobody sees it. That's where I come in. I run TitanScouting.com. Titan Scouting is athlete marketing service. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I make sure that athletes get exposure. Inexpensive and thorough. I work incredibly hard. I make sure that you guys get out to all the coaches, as many coaches as possible, to make sure that they know who you are. You get exposure, you get on their radar, and then they have you on their list. So when it comes to recruiting, they'll say, oh, I remember this kid, and they'll reach out to you if they're interested. That's what I do. I make sure they know who you are. It's very hard work, but I don't mind doing it because it helps athletes get a home. You contact me, TitanScouting.com, or go to Instagram, Titan Scouting, or Recruit Boss. One of those two, you can find me there. Message me, let me know what you want. We'll get you started. We'll customize your package for you. And then once you're locked in, we'll make sure that not only will I talk to coaches for you, but I will also guide you through the recruiting process and kind of be a go-between. I don't do negotiations. I'm not an agent. I'm just here to help you get exposure, get a deal, and get into college. That's what I want to do. Find you a home so you can play at the next level. Contact me, TitanScouting.com, and I'll help you know your goal. First, we know about House versus NCAA. Okay. I misspoke on my little TikTok videos I did, little short update. I said House versus NCAA because I read something in the House of Representatives and I conflated the two. It's literally Grant House and Sedona Price. So House is a person. So Grant House and Sedona Price, I'm reading it right here so I get it verbatim. They filed an antitrust lawsuit, surprise, surprise, seeking to allow college athletes to profit from their name, image, and likeness and share in the revenue generated by their sports. That's the original lawsuit. And that led to a $2.8 billion settlement. Now, that whole thing, it's still being kind of settled. It hasn't really been 100% settled yet. October 7th-ish is when the ruling came down. And then the court still has to kind of iron it all out. I believe April 7th was supposed to be the deadline when they did it, but they still haven't done it yet. And some of the tenets in there are $22 to $23 million payout per school. They're allowed to pay their athletes $22 to $23 million per school. The only schools that really have that kind of money are the Power 5 schools, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC. So they're the only ones that have that kind of money. And the breakdown would have been 70, 15, 15. So that's the proposed breakdown. 70% goes to football, 15% goes to men's basketball, 15% goes to all other sports. That's that breakdown. Not decided yet, and it causes an issue because now you have the haves or the have-nots. You have schools who cannot afford to pay that. They don't have the no collectives to back them up. So those schools are now going to basically be feeder teams for your bigger schools. Here's one right here. I got a bite I'm going to play. Norfolk State's coach was talking about the transfer portal. I was going to save this for another show, but it's appropriate here. So let's play that.
This is now a glorified JUCO. This is like Norfolk State Community College, because it's like when I say that, not because of the people or things like that, but it's just the way it is. JUCO coaches, I have so much more respect for them these days because they have to get a new team every year or every 2 years or something like that, right? Now we got to get a new team every year, every 2. So we basically a glorified JUCO because these kids, until mid-majors, and not just Norfolk State, until mid-majors get the money that high majors have, we're never going to be able to keep kids here, for a long time. I say it's easy to get them, it's harder to retain them. You can get them because there's a lot of kids that want opportunities. A lot of kids want opportunities, but once they get the opportunity and then they blow up, it's harder to retain them because now the big boys are going to come.
There you go. He said it for himself. That your Division 1 AA schools, your FCS schools, and some D2s, they're becoming feeder schools. So they're going to work hard to recruit a kid. They're going to bring him in. And within a year, the kid's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to put myself in the portal so I can try to go to Division 1. So you're going to have athletes who won't be able to make it to Division 1. And there's a reason. I do recruiting for a living, right? I do video production, and I do sports video predominantly, and I do recruiting. I've been recruiting athletes for 20 years. So I follow this stuff pretty closely, okay? And I've seen that back in the day, it used to be that I could talk to a coach at mid-December, late December sometimes, and I'd say, hey, what do you need? And they say, usually it's linemen and safeties, offensive, defensive linemen and safeties. And I could go out and find certain athletes who were potential Division 1, maybe predominantly FCS type kids, not FBS Division 1A, but 1AA. And I could hit that to the school and say, here's somebody for you. What do you think? And they can look at it as a project and say, you know what? In your Division 1, your FBS schools, your 1As, they've done that with some of my athletes in the past. They go, you know what? We already have offers out to this guy, waiting for them to accept, but we like him for this, or he's a project and we want to bring him on for our team. Well, now they don't have to do that. Now your FBS schools are going to go for the portal. If they have to fill in spots to complete their roster and they're looking for talent, they're not going to look for developmental talent. They're going to look for a sure thing. If you have an athlete who is a Division 1 caliber kid, whether they're playing at 1AA school or a Division 2 school, they've played for, say, 2 years already. They've shown that they can make the grade, they can pass a curriculum and handle college curriculum and college courses. They're going to cost less because they have 2 years of scholarship money under their belts, so the school only has to pay them for 2 more scholarship years, which was part of the settlement, by the way, partial scholarships, 1 and 2 year scholarships. They increased the number of scholarships for some sports. They decreased them for others. But by increasing the number of scholarships for teams, the reason they did that is not so more high school kids can get deals. It's so they can give more deals to the kids in the portal to get 1 and 2 year scholarships out to them. So those Division 1 schools are going to go for these players who are more mature, more developed, have already played at a college level for 2 years, cost less money, and have already can handle the curriculum. That's what they're going to do. They're going to ignore the projects. And what you have now is all the kids who are, look at the percentages, just going with football, what they say, 7.1% make it to Division 1, 7.1% can play in college at any level. 7.1% of all high school athletes can play in college, roughly. Division 1 is maybe 3.5%. I say reduce it to about 2 because of portal, but let's go with the number 3.5%. 3.5%. That means that 96.5% of high school athletes cannot play in Division 1. Period. And only 93 or 92.9% can play in college at all. Only 92.9%. Only 7.1% play in college. 92.9% cannot play in college at all. Okay? So that's 92.9% that can't play. So your Division 1 schools, they're going to have their pick of the litter. They don't care about the other guys. And what's going to happen is those additional, I think that 3.5% from the 7.1, you're looking at, what's that about? 3.6%. So about 3.6 going to Division 1 AA, 2, and 3. Those schools will be able to go over those athletes and pick them up, okay? But you're also going to have runoff from the portal because of all the players that enter the portal, of the 4,000, number one, they have to give up their scholarships. Number two, when they give up their scholarship and enter the portal, there's no guarantee that they're going to be picked up from the portal. And I believe it's like a 25 to 30% rate of people being taken out of the portal, which means that a lot of other athletes do not have that opportunity in the portal. They're screwed. So what happens? Well, your Division I AA's and your Division II's and your Division III's, they will pluck those kids out and say, hey, look, I know you didn't get luck there, but why don't you come to us? You tried it. It didn't work, but we can get you some kind of money. I mean, we have boosters. We can take care of something. So I had a coach from Maine, Division III school, and he said, I love the portal. I was like, why? He says, because I can get kids who go to the portal, don't get picked up off the portal, and then I can get them into my school and offer them some booster money or some kind of money for them, academic money, and give them a home and let them know they're going to contribute right away. I mean, there's teams that will use the portal. But then you have this coach from Norfolk State who's talking about recruiting hard. This is what these coaches do. They work so hard to recruit players. And when they find the players that fit, they're going to lose them. So you're going to have players who could go Division I but don't make it because, again, the numbers are so small. If only 3.5% go Division 1A or Division I altogether, 3.5% go Division I, then even fewer than that, like maybe 2% or so go Division 1A, right? The rest are going to go Division I AA or Division II, and then they're going to go there knowing we're not going to go Division I because you're going to fill the rosters with kids off the portal, but we're going to go to a lower level and then use that for about a year and then enter the portal, if even a year. That's what's happening. That's what's going on with college recruiting, okay? So something has to be fixed. Now, getting off the beaten path a bit, so let's get back on focus here. With the settlement, the House settlement, and all these new changes, here come the geniuses, because they brought it to the House of Representatives and they called them in, because once the politicians get involved, it's just going to get worse and worse. And never let government get involved in something. The worst things, I think Ronald Reagan said, the worst things you can hear, the worst words you can hear is I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The government can't even run the post office. They're not going to be able to help your business out and running it, right? Unless you have an actual businessman who has his hands in it, okay? So these politicians don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. Most of them never played college sports. They never coached in college, but it was brought to their attention. I called NCAA legal about a year ago, and I said, what's going on? What's happening, with transfer portal? And he says, well, we're bringing in a guy who's kind of a legislator. He's going to be our new person in charge, and he'll be able to talk to politicians. And I'm like, well, politicians already got involved by passing legislation in the first place, because that's where NIL started. It started in California as a state legislation. And I think 31 or 32, I think Colorado just adopted it. It's like 32 states of the 50 now have, if that's the latest number, now allow name, image, and likeness to occur. Jersey and California, I mean, as goes California, so goes Jersey. And they kind of did it first. So politicians got involved. When athletes sued the NCAA to be able to transfer as many times as they wanted, 6 or 7 states' attorneys general, politicians, got involved in that as well. And I said on a previous show, why are politicians getting involved in something like this? The only reason politicians get involved in stuff is either power or money. Well, there's no real power there, so it's got to be something to do with money. But here we go. Now we're here at the House of Representatives. They brought it to their attention. It's like when you're trying to sort out a fight between you and your sister or you and your brother, and then you call mom in. Don't call mom, because mom's going to make the decision and put her 2 cents in, and she doesn't know all the time what's going on behind the scenes, and then she's going to screw everything up. Okay? It does happen too much. They went to mom. Here we go. Here's an article from on3.com. On the same day, the House versus NCAA final approval hearing took place, which still hasn't been solidified yet. A transformative federal bill was introduced in the House of Representatives. It would replace the NCAA. While also shaking up the college athletics landscape, including with the transfer portal and conference realignment. So here it is. Now I'm going to read you some of the legislation itself, proposed legislation. Okay, it's HR 2663. It's called the Restore College Sports Act. Filed by Representative Michael Baumgartner, Republican out of Washington, would create the American College Sports Association. So they're going to replace the NCAA, that's the proposal, with the ACSA. Now, if you go back and watch episode 8 of the ProZone Show, you'll see that I proposed the NCFL, the National Collegiate Football League, and just turned it into a professional, semi-professional league with contracts, with salary caps, no trade clauses, all that stuff. That was my proposal about a year ago. Okay. So the entity would replace the NCAA and, quote, oversee and regulate college sports. Do you really want politicians to regulate college sports? I already have a flag on that. There's some parts of this I kind of like, other parts I don't like. Per the bill, the ACSA would have a commissioner appointed by the president with advice and consent of the Senate. So now we're going to have a commissioner at the government level to put their fingers in college sports. The commissioner would serve a 4-year term. Okay. In addition, the bill calls for name, image, and likeness funds and revenue directly shared with schools to be distributed equally among all student athletes of such institutions within the ACSA. So they want all athletes, every athlete, not just the big name ones, every athlete to be paid, which is cool, I guess. Okay, it's kind of cool. But what dollar value is going to be distributed among those athletes? That's a question that I have to ask. What dollar value? I may have to call this Baumgartner's office and ask some questions. I might do that. But what dollar value is it? Is it the $22 to $23 million from the settlement per team? Is that going to be, because not every school's got $22 to $23 million. Is it less money for Division III schools and more money for Division IIs? Is this only applied to the Division I schools? Or they say all students paid equally. And if that's the case, if you're using let's say $22 million a low end, your big schools, your big colleges have about 1,000 students that play Division I sports. Okay? So 22 million divided by 1,000, you're looking at about 22,000 per student per year. So you're getting paid 22 grand. That's fair because you're getting tuition on top of that. Your tuition is mostly paid for as it is. So you're looking at a college education of about, like, say, $50 million or $50,000 a year, right? $50,000 a year plus 22,000, you're like 72 grand. That ain't so bad. Okay. But when you go to smaller schools like your Division IIs, they have or Division IIIs, they have like 400 kids that play. So is it 22 million divided by 400, which is a hell of a lot more money per kid? Or does it even apply to Division III schools? Is it just for Division I schools? I have to call Baumgartner's office and ask a lot of questions about this because there's way too many of them. And I think I'll do that. Maybe I'll try to get something together for next week. But let me call their office and see what I can find out. Okay. Let me continue on with this. So they want to pay everybody equally across the board. Okay. In addition, the bill calls for nil funds and revenue directly shared with the schools. I said that equally. I said that already. Broadcast revenue would also need to be distributed equally. Broadcast revenue equally, and athletes will be able to transfer freely and do so without penalty or restrictions according to the bill. All right, so let's touch on the first one, broadcast revenue. How much, I looked this up the other day, but let me look it up again. What are the broadcast contracts for the NCAA? Okay. Let's get a quick little, real quick. I looked this up the other day, but I didn't keep it open, so let me see. Just example, ESPN, what's the new NCAA TV contract? 8-year agreement with ESPN worth $15 million annually to televise 40 college sports championships each year. So if that's the case, then that $15 million also should be divided equally among all the students? Well, here's my first question. If you're dividing $15 million equally among all students, all student athletes, all across the board, first off, the question I guess would be, is that $15 million going to all sports, including field hockey, lacrosse, tennis, golf? Because they're not necessarily televised under the same deal as, say, football or men's basketball or even women's basketball. They have different deals. Or is it by the sport? Is it football is X dollars and that gets divided up? So let's just say it's $15 million for football. And you want to divide that among we said 1,000 in the average Division I school. So that's $15 million divided by 1,000. What's that? $15,000, yeah? So $15,000 more per kid plus the $22,000, that's that $37,000. But is it all the sports, like we just said? That's not clear. Again, I have to call the office and find out, talk to this politician, see what the details are. This is the problem. They put these proposals together. These politicians put these friggin' proposals together, and they don't do the business math in their head first. They have to ask tons of questions. If they understood the college process at all, they have to ask these questions. But I'm getting frustrated. So then also, on top of that, on the business side, if ESPN has negotiated a deal with the NCAA, okay, and it's $15 million, how much of that goes to the school? Or according to the language of the bill, it sounds like all that money goes to, would also need to be distributed equally, and athletes would be able to transfer. So broadcast revenue would also need to be distributed equally. Does that mean all broadcast revenue goes to the actual college students or the student athletes, or does a portion of it go to them after the schools takes their piece? You can't take all the money away from the school because they're the ones that are trying to run the programs. You can't. It's like taking all the money from rich people and saying that'll cover any of our deficit. It doesn't work that way. You can't just do that. Rob from the rich and give to the poor. It doesn't work like that. It's a business. Politicians who don't know how to run a business are telling us how to run a business. Anyway, and then the part that bothers me, athletes would be able to transfer freely and do so without penalty or restrictions according to the bill. So they want the Wild West all the time. So you're not alleviating the transfer portal issue. You're just maintaining it, keeping it going. That's ridiculous. If you're going to try to fix this as a politician, right, in your brilliance as an elected official, then you need to find a way to put caps on the portal or have a commitment signed to a school. Because if I'm going to pay you $22,000 a year, then you should have to stay at a school for a specific amount of time. They need a contract for these athletes to stay, because right now the athletes don't have any loyalty to a school like we used to. They go to a school and they'll leave in a year. They don't care. They're following the LeBron James rules of leave whenever you feel like leaving and go to wherever you can to become a winner and build a super team. That's what they're doing. And that's not the right way to do things. You need to have some kind of commitment to develop that core, because a sports team requires a lot of camaraderie and a chemistry. So when you bring players together, they learn each other. They learn how to work off of each other. They learn how to anticipate each other's moves and who's going to do what and who can be relied on to do what job, and who's going to do the right kind of block or who's going to do this kind of pass. All these things are ingrained in these student athletes after playing together for several years and growing with each other. By tearing them apart every year, letting them leave whenever they want to leave, which is what this bill recommends, it's not going to help the kids in any way, shape, or form, and it's not going to help the teams. But let's go on. After a groundbreaking round of conference realignment shook up the college sports world, the Restore College Sports Act would transform them once again. Okay, that's just opinion from the article. This bill also takes aim at coaches' salaries as those figures rise. A coach's maximum annual salary, according to the bill, a coach's maximum annual salary would have a cap of 10 times, quote, 10 times the full cost of attendance at such institution. Okay, let's do a little math on this one. If you have a school and you're paying $50,000 a year tuition, okay, that's, what's that? $200,000 a year. Times 10, that's $2 million. So you have a coach at a school with tuition at $50,000 a year who's paid $2 million to coach there. Okay. The school gets $100,000 a year. Their tuition costs $100,000 a year. So that's $400,000 times 10, $4 million. Fine. But here's the problem. If you have a school that is paying a coach only $10 million when they would normally be getting $4 or $5 million, depending on the school, okay? They're getting paid $2 million. Only $2, but stick with me. Getting paid $2 million. What's going to make the coach want to coach at a team where athletes will be able to transfer freely and do so without penalty restrictions according to the bill? If the players can leave whenever they want to, what coach is going to say, oh, you know what, what good coach is going to say, for $2 million, I want to deal with that mess every frigging year? You're going to have people that will take that money. I mean, $2 million is nothing to sneeze at, but the amount of work that a college coach does, again, a politician doesn't have a clue how much work goes into being a college coach. You're working all year round. You're training and developing athletes. You're developing game plans. You're managing scheduling. You're dealing with recruiting. You're flying all over the country to see kids, evaluating film. There's so much they do, game film and recruiting film. There's so much work that these coaches do. So you're going to say for $2 million, what's going to happen is, what might happen is you're going to have a coach who's like, well, I could make $5 million. I used to make $5 million, but now I'm only making $2 million. So either A, they're going to go to the schools that have the higher tuitions, 1. 2, you're going to get coaches who are lower tier coaches who are just going to be happy to make the $2 million. They might be good coaches, but not great coaches. And they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to take that $2 million, and they're going to go to a team and they're not going to care. And then they're going to get their $2 million. And if players leave, they're like, fine, whatever. That's an issue. Then, of course, then you got to look at it like West Point. West Point, the estimated tuition for a student at West Point, when I went there, they were saying we're getting paid like $500,000. It's a $500,000 a year education. I mean, that's including the military training and everything that goes in between. But does that count? $500,000 a year? That's $1 million, or $500,000 a semester. I'm sorry, that's $1 million a year, or is it $500,000 a year times 10? What's that? Yeah, $500,000 a year times 10. That's $50 million. Is it $50 million? $500,000? $5 million. That's $5 million. That's still a nice chunk of change for the Army football coach, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think these guys are just coming up with numbers and they're not looking at the math on it. So when I call, I got to ask a lot of questions. I have a list of them for these guys because that doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the politician's thinking on this, Baumgartner. I don't know what he's thinking. Okay, let's continue on with this thing. The bill was introduced in the House of Representatives on Monday, this past Monday, referred to the House Committee on Education and Workforce. Representative Tim Walberg, Republican of Michigan, is the chair of the committee. I have to ask him too. And previously expressed concern about the state of college sports landscape, particularly with the impact of spending on tuition and fees. Okay. If a company is paying their staff X dollars, well, here's my question. Okay. NBA, NFL. These players have Major League Baseball, $100 million a year, $50-60 million a year. Where's the House of Representatives on that? With the bill saying we have to restrict these pros and how much money they're making. Where are they? For all intents and purposes, the NFL is a nonprofit organization, much like colleges are. I don't know how they're a nonprofit organization, but they worked out some loopholes and they're considered a nonprofit organization. All right? So if that's the case, then why isn't the House of Representatives stepping in to say we have to rein in the payment of these professional players? Why? Why are you going after the college kids? Look, I'm not a huge fan of these guys getting paid $3-4 million based off of potential and not performance, because that's what's happening. They're not performing in college, they're performing in high school, and then they're assuming that they're going to do well in college when a lot of them don't. But I don't understand the logic behind this, and I have to look into it in more detail because it makes no sense, no logical sense to me. So yeah, that's the gist of it. Now I found the bill itself. Okay, it's Restore College Sports Act, and the basic tenets are here. You have, and I'm going to gloss over those real quick. Commissioner, 4-year term commissioner, all revenue relating to this is a fun one. All revenue relating to name, image, and likeness, including direct payments from member institutions of higher education and collectives, shall be distributed equally among all student athletes of such institutions within the ACSA. So, okay, this is something that this is why on 3 Sports, these guys as sports writers, they gloss over stuff too much. That's why I like to read the bill itself. All revenue sharing, all revenue relating to name, image, and likeness, including direct payments from member institutions, that means the money that the schools will pay based on this new settlement, okay, House versus NCAA, there's that settlement that the schools can now pay $22 to $23 million per year in nil money to their athletes. Check. And then the nil collective money would be monitored by the school itself and handled through a third-party intermediary. So it's trackable. So we know what kind of deals the kids have, and it's all transparent, okay? So you're paying X amount of dollars to a kid. So all that shall be distributed equally among all student athletes of such institutions within the ACSA. What institutions? The sport itself or all sports? It says all student athletes of such institutions within. So any school within the ACSA, it says all students. So if you're the way this reads, if you are a nil collective for a University of Georgia football team, not to pick on Georgia again, but if you're the nil collective for the University of Georgia football team, and you have $4 million that you want to pay to their athletes, in addition to the $22 million that they're getting from the House settlement, okay, House versus NCAA settlement, that's $26 million. According to this, it sounds like all that money from that nil collective doesn't, even though it's earmarked for football, should go to every single athlete now. So $4 million divided among 1,000 athletes for a Division I school. No, $4 million divided by 1,000. What's that? $4,000? 40,000? Something like that. About 4,000, right? About 4,000. That's it. That doesn't make any sense to me. Student athletes of member institutions of higher education shall have the right to transfer freely among such institutions without penalty or restriction. That they got right. Let's see what else they have here. Athletic conferences shall be comprised of member institutions of higher education within the same time zone. Now, I like this part. Athlete conferences shall be comprised of member institutions of higher education within the same time zone to minimize travel and academic disruption. Gary Arima from the UConn girls basketball, he was asked a question about this, and he has a good bite here. Listen to this.
Well, the NIL part, I think is, I think it's a test. It's a test for whether people are full of shit or whether they're serious. All right, so it's a test for, do we keep the charade of student athlete and amateurism, or do we call it what it is? Semi-professional, pay-for-play sports. So either keep the charade of student athlete, which, teams wouldn't be going 3,000 miles to play conference games if it had anything to do with student athlete welfare. That's number one. So we obviously threw that in the garbage can. So let's just call it what it is. We're going to pay these guys to play basketball or play football or play them to play, any sport at a university. And then let's make it a business and figure out how do we manage this business. Other sports have done it. Pro sports, they've done it. They sign kids to contracts.
That's it. So he's right though. When you have these athletes who are traveling 3,000 miles, and they're supposed to be student athletes. So now they have to travel 3,000 miles to play, and then 3,000 miles home, and then go to class the next day. Well, they're students first. It's called student athlete, not athletic student, student athlete, right? That's what it's supposed to be. So that's one tenet that I agree with. But they could do that with regular contracts. They can do that. They don't need this bill to do that. If anything, if the NCAA has any scrote whatsoever, then they will actually get on top of this, because they've been behind everything. They've been behind on everything. They were behind on name, image, and likeness legislation. People were talking about it for years, and then California passed it. And they dragged their feet because they're the illustrious NCAA, and they're above the fray. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're behind the curve. You're being reactive instead of proactive. You should have been ahead of this from day one. But then name, image, and likeness happens. Then the transfer portal comes in, and they hear the fuss about wanting to transfer more than once. And when they say, "Oh, those are our rules. You transfer once," but now look what happened. Now you got a lawsuit against you because you didn't allow that, and now everybody's doing it. Not just those athletes who sued you, but everyone's doing it. And now you are like, well, we paying athletes, we're going to monitor that, and you're going to be, but you can't monitor that because it comes from a no collective, which is a 501c3, which is not within your jurisdiction. And they can pay these kids whatever the hell they want to pay them. So NCAA is behind on everything. I even brought up to the NCAA a year ago when I was talking to the legal department, and I said, do you know about the College Athlete Protection Act? He said, what's that? I'm like, oh my God, the same people in California who proposed the name, image, and likeness legislation have also proposed around the same time the College Athlete Protection Act, CAPA, C-A-P-A. College Athlete Protection Act basically states how to pay athletes and forces schools to pay them a certain percentage, which kind of came out in the House versus NCAA settlement. I'll tell you what, maybe I'll touch on the CAP, the College Athlete Protection Act, in another show. I've been kind of teasing that for a while, but it's kind of the same. It's just a lot more money. All right. So now the NCAA is behind on this. This is being done, and if they don't react or get ahead of this, be proactive instead of reactive to this, and the problem is now they have to be reactive because the legislation is passed, or proposed. But once it's passed, then there's no way to fix it. Okay, then they have to react to that. So they have to get ahead of this and say, hold it. It's like your mom saying to you, if you guys don't figure this out for yourselves, then I'm going to figure it out for you. Maybe that's the purpose of this legislation, this proposed legislation. Maybe it's the politicians saying, if you don't figure this out, we're going to do this. And then the NCAA can say, oh, whoa, hold on, mama. We don't need you involved. We'll figure it out. I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm going to call these politicians and see if I can get an answer from their staff members and figure this out. I have no idea. So then we have more. It continues. The maximum annual salary of each coach of a member institution of higher education, so that's anybody in the ACSA, shall be capped at a level of not more than 10 times the full cost of attendance for students at such institution. Not more than that. Is there a way around that? Yeah, sure. Incentivize shows. That's just a salary. It doesn't mean they can have bonuses from shows or appearances, public appearances, or whatever. I mean, there's ways around that. All revenue generated from the broadcast college sports events on television shall be shared equally among all member institutions of higher education within the ACSA. That's a lot of schools. Are you trying to say that Division III schools who aren't televised are going to get a share of the television money that's earmarked and paid because of Division I schools? That's how that reads. A lot of questions. So that's where we stand with the ACSA. Proposed House of Representatives legislation, not signed yet, and honestly it has to be approved by the House, then approved by the Senate, and it's got to go to committee, and they got to revisions and all that stuff. Okay, there's going to be a lot of issues that come down with this, and they got to sort it all out if it's even gets to committee. Okay, but they proposed the bill. And then it still has to be signed by the president. And if I'm president, I'm like, no. First off, you got to work this out because this makes no sense at all. There's a bunch of crap in this. And we got to iron this out. You don't understand how college sports works. On the positive side, I mean, Donald Trump is a president, and he did own a team in the USFL. The team didn't do very well. New Jersey Generals, they did okay, but at least he has some experience in that area. I don't know. But this is where we stand with this. The legislation's a hot mess. So if the NCAA doesn't get on top of it and try to fix this before the politicians get involved, then it's done. You're never going to get your hands back around it again because the politicians are going to run with it, and it's going to be an absolute convoluted mess, as this bill sounds. That's my take on it. I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So thank you for listening. I'll deep dive into this some more. I'm going to call the politician and see if I can get some more input on this and ask some good questions. And then I'll be back to talk about other things, past events, and the College Athlete Protection Act, and how the sports are changing. It's probably next is how the sport's changing so badly, and where we go from here. All right. Until next time. Thank you for listening. I'm Matt Roberts. Know your goal. Hey guys, thank you for watching the ProZone. Make sure you check back for more episodes. And if you haven't done so already, like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what we have coming up next.